This is Talk with TAS, a radio experience hosted by Dr. Teresa A. Smith, a licensed counselor and professor focused on the transformative journeys of her guests and the lessons they've learned along the way. She's also an author, speaker, and nationally known social media personality. Join her now as she interviews newsmakers, artists, authors, and more. You will learn something new. This is Talk with TAS. Here's your host, Dr. Teresa A. Smith, also known as Dr. TAS.
Welcome to my kitchen today. I am so excited whenever I have an opportunity to sit down and talk with my friends. Today I have Dr. William Shane Hesse, and Shane is from Arizona. Shane's specialty is wellness, health, wellness, physical well-being. And right now, I think we need to know more about that, particularly as it relates to our kids. And so I asked Shane if he would come on and help us to understand what the connection is between our physical health, for us as adults too, but really our kids, but that physical health and the social, emotional, and academics. Because I talk to parents and parents want their kids to be successful. Well, Shane is here to help us figure out how we can merge everyone's expectations together, and particularly academics, the health, the emotional, and the physical well-being. So Shane, welcome to Transform with TAS.
Hi, Dr. TAS. How are you?
Oh, Shane, I'm good.
Your opening reminded me of a conversation I had last night. It was with a mom, and she has a 5-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son here in Phoenix, Arizona. And the same conversation that I think we're going down, we had last night. And it's with a mom I've never met before, but education came up, health and wellness of our students. And I want to share with you that story. Please dissect it however you wish. But what I learned was the son was named Levi, and Levi was at a charter school here in Arizona called Great Hearts Academy, known for its academics here in Arizona. And the headmaster had brought Levi into the office of the mom and said, Levi, we're really concerned with your behavior in class. You seem to be a little more fidgety. Your focus isn't where it needs to be. And mom had little or no clue about what happens every day in Levi's classroom. And so when we really broke this down, Levi had went into the office and they tested Levi. And Dr. TAS, guess what their findings were with Levi? And I say this because I am certain there's other parents out there that are nodding their heads like, hey, that's my son. My son is a little fidgety. My son can't sit still very often. Take a guess on what the headmaster, his findings were about little Levi.
Well, I'm afraid to say, I don't want to be stereotypical. Did they think it was ADD, ADHD? Was it that?
I think that's why they first started talking to him. And it's not, and mom knew, there was a little bit of that there, but their findings was that his IQ was off the charts.
That's what I was going to say. He was bored to death.
He was bored.
Mm-hmm.
So, the headmaster didn't have a clue. The teacher didn't have a clue. And I look at the foundational principles of our teachers out there. And as an educator myself, I see this, but I think knowledge is key sometimes. And I think we have to understand the foundation between hope, engagement, and health and wellness of our kids. We have to look at the whole child concept. We can't look at the child from the neck up. And I look at that mistake of that teacher and that mistake of that headmaster, that's what they were focusing on. And the conversation I had with Levi's mother was, Levi is strong. Levi has hope. Levi wants to learn, and he's getting left behind, even though the teacher thinks he's a disruption. The headmaster thinks he's not engaged. You know, they'll pull the recess for him because he's not able to get that focus in. And so some of the takeaways, they did write an IEP for Levi. And I asked the mom, I said, on that IEP, is there anything that discusses the health and wellness of the child? And she said, no. So they talked about extended test time and being able to write his answers out. But did they talk about seating arrangement? Did they talk about the fact that Levi should have a choice between, hey, I could have a fidget spinner in my hand, a doodle pad on my desk, a physio ball to sit on? Did they give that alternative option for Levi to be successful? She said, no. And I said, that would be my first revisit. See, Levi's engaged through physical movement. And you and I both know that cognition is raised when the physical component of a student is engaged also. So cognition, movement equals more retention, more memory retention, a more engaged student. So if we can put that together, the headmaster then came back to the mom and said, well, we really need to get Levi to be more active. So mom agreed, and they agreed to give him a few minutes to be more active in the classroom. And I said, let me guess. The setting of the classroom is rows, perfectly uniformed, teacher desk, and students all in one mode. But you and I both know that all our students learn differently. Mm-hmm. And poor Levi got left behind for a little while, but mom was so thankful that this is an opportunity for her and her son to continue to grow. She was going to move him to a higher level school for higher IQ kids. And I said, give this a shot first. See, sometimes I feel that principals understand that concept, teachers understand that concept, but I think there's more that they can learn, and knowledge is key sometimes. So if we can get that idea and concept that, hey, movement, nutrition, healthy leadership, our healthy community, the ability for our students to be engaged in a classroom is definitely connected to that unique ability for our kids to move in a classroom, our kids to be able to be creative thinkers, our ability for little Levi to write on a doodle pad if he needs to draw while the teacher's talking about something he already understands. Gosh, I think if somebody was talking about subtraction 3 minus 1, I probably wouldn't be paying attention much either, you and I. So that was a story. I really wanted to share it because it resonated with me. And some of my aha moments were lack of knowledge of the parent. Parent needs to know more. I think this show is going to be astounding for our parents and our communities out there, because this is going to give them some knowledge, and that knowledge is going to be power for them to fight for their kids in the classroom, instead of them following what they think is conformity of education today. And if we're going to revolutionize America's education to be more healthy, to be more engaged, and give our kids hope, then we need to provide platforms for students in every classroom that allows them to be individual thinkers, to be able to move if they want, to be able to choose their environment in their area that helps them be engaged. And you'll find a more successful student that wants to be at school. So I just wanted to share that because it was fantastic. I think it fit right into this.
Shane, thank you for sharing the story of Levi. Let's just back up just a little bit, because you gave us so much in this one story that really is happening in real time. Now, your background is physical education. I think sometimes my physical education teachers get a bad rap. I think that folks don't know the significance of movement as it relates to the cognition. So you got your start as a physical education teacher. Then you got your doctorate in education leadership. What was it that really ignited the passion for helping others to see the connection between physical health and student achievement?
Dr. TAS, it was my own kids. In 2007 to 2010, I had my own kids, and that was my wake-up call, because my research showed that kids today are pegged to live 5 to 10 years shorter lifespans than we are because of the lack of physical activity, the lack of nutritional standards or opportunities at the home. That was my aha moment. And at the time, I was at a Title I middle school, and it was ranked as a D school, the lowest here in Arizona. And so these were 7th and 8th graders here in Arizona. And these kids that I met, and I was a physical education teacher my first year, and these kids would run through a wall for me. Why? Because I believed in them. I gave them hope. They were engaged. And I looked at physical activity as a connection directly to social, emotional climate of that student. And so my thoughts were, why does it just have to be the 45 minutes the kids are with me? Why can't I take it into their classrooms? Why can't I take this concept before school? Why can't I take it after school? And what was created was that students were being able to have those choices like little Levi did. Teachers were starting to see the benefit of giving those options for kids, where they would have sat them on a pole during recess for their behavior. Now they're understanding more in depth why that behavior has happened. So with that knowledge, now they're able to provide a successful learning environment where these kids were engaged, and they were knocking out of the park their homework, they're knocking out of the park their test scores. And in a 2-year time period, there was 35 teachers on that campus. I would assume there was 29 that were on board, because there's always going to be some that aren't. That school went from a D to a B plus. And those kids in Arizona, they have what's called a Gallup poll. It's a national poll, but some schools don't use it. But they measure the hope and engagement specifically of students. And their hope scores prior to the transformation of the school was under 27%. The kids had no hope. If a kid has no hope, what is he going to do? Which led to the engagement being around the same score. But when the 2 year later, that poll came out, those students wanted to be at school. They wanted to come, they wanted to learn. And it was just because of the shift of mindset to know that, hey, listen, yes, I'm a physical education teacher, but we're teaching physical activity, and we could do it inside the classroom. We can do it outside the classroom. And if you're going to be a great teacher, let's connect that together. And so I kept showing them concepts, and their hope and engagement scores were over 80%. Kids wanted to come to school, and that's when I knew we had something special. I was fortunate enough to be the Arizona Teacher of the Year that year, and then Shape America Teacher of the Year for all physical education. And that's when I really knew we had something that we could share with Arizona, and now hopefully with the world, with our new book that we wrote together.
I want you to talk a little bit about this idea of shaping the minds of aspiring athletes. Because a lot of our kids, they believe that they're going to become the next professional athlete. But when I was looking at some of the work that you've done in research, you were able to help educators understand that when we talk athletics, athleticism, we're really talking leadership. to be able to bring all of the content together so that you have the whole child being addressed, whether it's in my PE class or it's in the math classes, bring everything together so that the child is connecting with everyone all the time. Sometimes folks think leadership is separate when everything that we do is about leadership, and particularly in athletes. Athleticism, everything's about leadership. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I love the concept shaping minds of aspiring athletes. I do. I want to offer that our leadership, I think we talked about it in our first part of the story, is I don't fault the teacher and I don't fault the principal or the headmaster. I want to offer that there's more and there's knowledge there, and it's not something we have to put extra on a teacher's plate. It's something that is necessary and will actually take things off your plate, because that healthy leadership aspect that you just mentioned, once you give the child the opportunities to be creative and learn through this, they're going to start leading their own classrooms. Then the teacher can step back as facilitator and the students are now leading your classroom. So you want to talk about healthy leadership, let's give the kids opportunities. It's not a dictatorship in that classroom, and we have to connect with those kids. So healthy leadership is very important to me. And I think to finalize that question is, it doesn't matter if it's a physical education teacher and they want to do the interdisciplinary approach with teaching, which I encourage. But if, say, we have a social studies teacher in 8th grade that's talking about the Civil War, why can't that Civil War social studies teacher during that unit call the physical education teacher and say, hey, we're doing the Civil War. I want to show the difference between the two sides. I want to show how the lines shifted. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about sun safety, because you're going to involve health. What the soldiers do out there without all this sunblock that we have. And nutrition. And then they could bring it into that PE classroom and they could have like capture the flag. They could do different games that are physically active, but it shows the movements of the troops. And then they can have that lecture about nutrition, and they can have the lecture about sunset. They can embed it. And so you could do this concept with anything. And it doesn't have to be, just PE teacher putting movement in the classroom, because if we're talking about social emotional learning, we need physical activity, we need nutrition, we need healthy leadership, we need our community to be healthy. And these things are all opportunities that can be done in a classroom setting as a healthy leadership concept.
Well, Shane, I like that example that you gave, because to me, it's interdisciplinary, but it's project-based learning also, because it's so many slices to it that you could give a child, and I'm looking always at the different learning styles. So hopefully at some point we're going to hit every child's learning style, because you talked about Levi, and I think we're hitting at the kinesthetic, because he needed that movement. Whether he was doodling while he was at his desk, he needed to be able to move. And so to me, the fact that you have been able to help your school, the school that you're at the time, which is a Title I school. Title I schools are schools that typically students are not performing. There's a large number of free and reduced lunch students who attend those schools. And so they get quite a bit of money from our U.S. Department of Education, which flows through our state departments of ed. And so those schools are always being looked at, because those kids need as much assistance as we can provide them so that they can be successful. So when you talk about the hope and the fact that it went from like 27 up, and we went from a D to a B plus school in 2 years. 2 years. I mean, that's almost unheard of. 2 years. And you didn't even have everybody on board, but you had the majority of the faculty, the teaching staff on board. It's amazing to see just what you guys were able to do. Not only have you done research around the athletes, and you've been working with your Title I school, you and your partners had an opportunity to testify in Arizona and were able to make some changes. Would you share with the audience the changes that you made, which are very significant?
Yes, we were finding that in our research that teachers were, and it was okay. It was okay with the principal if students were held from recess or held from their lunchtime if they were acting up in class, to use that as punishment. In the same token, as we do physical education or we do athleticism in the after school sports or before school sports opportunities, using physical activity as punishment. So these are some of the findings we were having. And if we're trying to build culture in a school, because I believe that culture drives success, and our students are being withheld from recess, from the things that make them feel engaged. You can't tell me, if you're going to pull a kid because he acted up for whatever reason, you pull him from recess, that he's going to come back and be better for you for your last 2 hours. It's going to be worse. And then the teacher's going to say, little Johnny, go to the office. And then the student lost all learning. So our team found that research. There was 4 or 5 of us on this team, and we were able to speak in front of the Senate. And there's a recess bill that was passed because of this. And I remember this day specifically. If you guys have ever been to a Senate committee hearing, let's just say they're not really interested in listening. So I was the cleanup for our team, and our 3 other speakers went, and we got a certain amount of time. It was very short time. But in my time, I got to the podium, and there was one, I want to say there were 7 or 8 up on the board, and one was actually looking at me.
Ooh.
I had one on their cell phone.
Yeah.
I had 2 talking to each other, and the others were writing down. Does that sound like a classroom right now?
Well, I'm not gonna answer. I almost said it, but
And so I very, very quick, I said, hey guys, Dr. Hesse, how are you? And maybe one kind of looked, the other one's still looking. I said, let's do me a favor right now. Why don't you guys do me a favor? When I say the word go, I'd like you to stand up for me. And this, he gave him an elbow, and then a couple heads look, and I said, okay, you guys ready? I want you to stand up, and all I want you to do is reach to the sky, and then you can sit back down. They all stood up. The room was floored. People were laughing, like they actually stood up. But what did that do? I had every eye on me.
you sure did.
And they listened to all of my speech, however short it was, because I made them stand up and move. But now their brains were focused. Like, who's this guy? Why did we just stand up? And I used that as an example of why recess physical activity is so important to our kids. And I think that was their aha moment of, we can't take this away. And that little stretch we just did, that focus we had. And so now in Arizona, every K-5 institution, private, public, charter, has a minimum 2 20-minute recesses per day. And so I attribute that to our team. We had a great team, and I was just happy to be a part of it and transform Arizona. And I hopefully we can continue that mission. And you and I are with what we're doing. And I applaud everybody. So.
Well, thank you, Shane, because that to me is, and I didn't know all the backstory with it. I knew that you had testified, you and your colleagues had testified with the state Senate. But you're right to see them, because you don't get very little time, and they are multitasking. And to see that you guys have prepared to, and you got a time limit, and then they're not even listening because they're doing other things. And like you said, it looked like a classroom. And to be able to illustrate what you were talking about in real time, I agree. I think it got their attention. Now, you have been doing a lot. We could talk about the NCAA work that you've done. We'll have to do that another time, because now I think my audience wants to know, okay, this gentleman is making some changes, and how can he help us? Talk with them about your new project, the Healthy Schools.
We have a team of 10 nationally renowned authors, including Dr. TAS, and we have put our social emotional work, our physical activity work, our healthy leadership work, our healthy community work, we put it into a parent, teacher, administrator friendly, basically how-to guide, Dr. TAS, and that guide is all digital. And we want to spread the word that parents, I encourage you guys just to have more knowledge when it comes to what's happening day to day with your kids, because you're not in that classroom. And if we can give the power to the teacher to have more knowledge, power to the parent to have more knowledge about the concepts you're learning today, then you're going to have that opportunity to be successful, whether it's an IEP or whether it's a student without it. Being able to have that foundational principle to keep your child more healthy in a classroom. You know, if it's fourth grade, you're switching classrooms every time. So you have, 5 different teachers. And so we want to really hit the mark with students. You need to understand what helps you be engaged. And then we need to give that knowledge to the teacher. And that teacher needs to find that connection between the two. And that work that we have done as a team, we've been able to put it into a digital book, and parents, you can have it on your phone. There's virtual coaching in it. You can hear from authors like myself and Dr. TAS and Dr. Lineberry and get the concept that really resonates with you and your child, because every child's going to have that differentiated approach to learning. But you can go to your section and say, this is going to be us. Give that knowledge, share the knowledge with your teacher, and use the ultimate guide for creating healthy learning cultures. And that learning culture can happen in any classroom, any subject area, and any age level.
So if I'm a parent and I'm trying to figure out how to help my child, I know you told me about the coaching, but I don't have an education background. If I'm reaching out to you, how does your guide help to shape my ability to go in and advocate for my child?
That's a great question. I would offer, with the story about Levi's mom, she felt the same as some of the parents that might be our audience here. And fortunately, I was the one that was able to share basically the contents of what is in our Healthy Learning Cultures Guide. You and I and our team can't be everywhere, but the Healthy Learning Cultures Guide can. So my suggestion would be, if you can go to our websites and look at some of the culture, the ideas that we have, really the theme and concept of your show, then you can download the Healthy Learning Cultures Guide and have it on your phone. And even if you can't get a hold of Dr. TAS that day or somebody that day to sit down with you and have that coffee, they're going to be on your phone coaching you the same way. And so my advice would be, delve through some of the concepts that we wrote in the Healthy Learning Cultures Guide. Take the time to learn about the historical background of that concept, building a healthy leader, the social emotional aspects of a child, physical activity before, during, and after school, building a healthy community, how nutrition can be directly related to social emotional learning with a child as well. And then as you go through the different sections, you'll be able to say, hey, that's my child.
Thank you again, Shane, for dropping by the kitchen. And I can't wait till you come back and spend a little more time with me.
Thank you. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Talk with TAS with Dr. Teresa A. Smith. For more information on this show and Dr. TAS, you should visit AskDrTAS.com. That's AskDrTAS.com. Talk with TAS is a production of DQ Consulting, LLC. Dr. Teresa Smith, executive producer.